Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about technical skills. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, is it really true that backend developers are better at technical things than frontend developers? And the short answer is yes. This is going to be a really popular video because I'm going to make so many enemies, but I'm going to say yes. On average, for sure, the backend developers have a better technical understanding than the frontend developers. Now I'm going to raise my finger. I'm going to say it depends on the frontend developer as well, because if you compare the average frontend developer to the average backend developer, most of what the front-end developer actually knows is related to tooling. It's related to basically the bare bone basics of what the web is all about, which is the UI, which is CSS, things like this, JavaScript, and so forth. And although there is logic being executed on the client, especially now that we're using mostly SPAs, the logic that is connected to that, it very much depends, of course, also on the nature of the project, because there are some front-end projects that are truly complicated. As an example, you can imagine that if you are on the React team or the Angular team or working on Vue, or if you're actually building the tool that is being used on the UI, the things that you have to face are quite a lot more complicated than if you work on your standard CRUD application, e-commerce type of site, where you're basically hired to make a responsive design, even that, and create a few navigation bars or things of this nature. Now these skills are absolutely useful and they are valuable, and that is why we have front-end developers in the first place. But if you measure the requirement of technical understanding and understanding of architecture and good practices in comparison to that of the backend, it's not on par. As an example, just now, as an example, one of the things that I feel is very telling when we talk about the differences between quality in terms of technical skills in front-end versus back-end is the fact that front-end pretty much is, we have almost no one in the entire industry. I have still not met a front-end, or rather I've met front-end developers that are truly, truly good, but most have no understanding of how to structure their own architecture so that the system scales. They have no understanding of what the problems are for large-scale development or what considerations to keep. Most front-end code bases don't even have proper unit testing, because that is not something that a front-end developer seems to value. It's not something that is all that common. And what's even funnier sometimes, I feel, is that quite a lot of front-end developers really don't actually have a mastership over some of the core technologies that make up the UI. It's something that I find very disturbing sometimes when I meet the front-end developers, or so-called front-end developers, who don't even know how to use CSS properly, or rather they consider it to be one of their weaknesses, and yet it is one of the most core things for them to understand. There's no shame in admitting that you haven't mastered CSS just yet, because it is a very complicated topic. But to be okay with it, or to have an issue in this area, is very similar to a backend developer having an issue with understanding how to set up a server or to use a database or something like that. It's a core piece of what you do. You need to know this. This is important. But instead we have people using CSS frameworks and other tools at their disposal in order to kind of circumvent the whole process of learning something that is pretty damn important if you're supposed to be able to work at the highest levels or work on very complicated front-end projects. Now, I'm not in any way stating that being a front-end developer is easier than being a back-end developer, but what I'm stating is that the area of front-end is much more focused on knowing tools. Tooling is pretty much where most of the front-end developers gain their value to the marketplace. And the backend developers are different in this fashion because there is absolutely tooling involved in backend development work, but the focus there is much more on architecture and good programming practices and so forth. I will even go one further, and I will say that I believe that a backend developer on average gains a much deeper understanding of just programming in general than a front-end developer mostly does. It's not because it's not possible to gain it, but rather because the focus is very different in front-end as opposed to back-end. The same thing can be said for system levels development. If you work as a web developer on the back-end, odds are that you may get a deeper technical understanding of the things that go on in a web application of some sort than that of a front-end developer, but you will not gain as deep an understanding of how computer science works as someone who works with computer science. Or you might not know all that much about the underlying system that you're actually running everything on, which is the area of a system levels developer. So it becomes a matter of what the focus is of that role within IT. So what I want you to take away from this is that I absolutely believe that front-end developers, or rather back-end developers, have a greater technical depth than the average front-end developer. That doesn't mean that this is true for every single front-end developer, because I will even go and say that the best front-end developers that I have met are full-stack developers, or people who have started out as back-end developers and then transitioned into front-end, because this is where most of programming, like the big systems, are primarily built in the back-end fashion, and this is where the more technical things of a system actually are being developed. And this is very useful. These are useful skills regardless of where you work, whether it's front-end or back-end. But in front-end land, although you get some of this knowledge by doing front-end work, this area of IT is much more focused on tooling and libraries and things of this nature, a vast ecosystem of opportunities, right? And because of that, there is, I would argue, less focus on the core principles of programming that I believe are truly important in order for you to become a really strong and well-rounded programmer. So if you spend your entire career in front-end, odds are that you won't get the same depth of knowledge when it comes to general programming as if you were on the back end. This is just what I've seen, and it doesn't apply to every single front-end developer, but I would say that it is definitely a trend that the quality of programming skill is a little bit different. Have a great day.